Hi techies, what's going on over there at your end? Here is welcoming you to the CSS Grid tutorial where we shall be considering the awesomeness of CSS Grid in structuring website layouts. CSS Grid, also known simply as Grid, is a two-dimensional based web layout. We've considered already CSS Flexbox. The thing about Flexbox and Grid is that they both have use cases for structuring the layout of websites. But the core difference between the Flexbox and the Grid is that while the Flexbox is one-dimensional, the Grid is two-dimensional in nature. Let's take off by considering some key terminologies related to the concept of CSS Grid. The very first term to look out for is the grid container. The grid container is the direct parent of all the grid items. In this example, the grid container represents the blue border that is housing or containing the 6 grid items. Notice quickly that these grid items, 6 of them, are laid out such that they form rows and columns, vertical axis and a horizontal axis. The next term is the grid line. The grid line represents lines that divide up and compose the structure of the grid. They can either be horizontal grid lines or vertical grid lines. The horizontal grid lines are called row grid lines, while the vertical grid lines are called column grid lines. Here in this example, the yellow line is an example of a column grid line. The next term, as depicted in the pictorial right here, is a grid cell. A grid cell is the single unit of the grid. Next is the grid area. A grid area is composed of any number of grid cells. Next term is the grid gap. Just as we had in CSS Flexbox. In this case as well, the grid gap is the gap between any two grid cells. Alright, now let's hold it right here. That's it about a brief intro into CSS Grid and its terminology. In the next video, we shall be looking at how we can dive into our code editor to get to code in CSS Grid and use it to lay out our websites.